Hello everybody and welcome back to Belstead Lane. As you can see, I've been hard at work getting all the mainline track in on the layout, and that's what I've been doing for the last month or so. Got there in the end. Did take a while due to the route I decided to take with the track laying on the scenic section, but overall I'm extremely happy with how it turned out. So just to show you how the scenic track will flow around the room, we come out of the fiddle yard on this side, and then this is the countryside end of the layout, so we have a very long sweeping gentle curve which goes around this corner of the room, and then it meets up to an S-bend. So if I just bring the camera over a little bit, you'll see how we have an S-bend there before the set of points, and then the track over here will straighten up, and then it will cross over what is called Mini Halifax Junction. So I've mapped the point work out to copy a real junction on the Great Eastern Main Line, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. But if I just carry on moving this way past all the point work, you'll see that this turnout has been left blank. That is to access the depot, which will be going over in that corner in the future. So when I come to lay the track for that in the future, I will add on to that turnout. And then carrying on this way, we have another left-hand curve, which then brings it to the other side of the layout to meet up with the field yard here. All of the track on the scenic section is Pico Code 75 concrete sleeper track, just to make it a bit more modern. And then what I've also done is I've used the Pico transition pieces, which take the track from code 100 in the field yard to the code 75, just so then the trains will carry on running happily. On the scenic section, I decided to respace all of the sleepers on the concrete sleeper track, just to make the track work a bit more realistic, and I'm really happy I did. Certainly did take a long time though. That's the main reason why it's taken as long as it has to get all this laid, but I am extremely happy I made that plunge. The curves on the layout also have super elevation added to them, which is another nice detail I decided to add on the scenic section. I also added DCC Concepts solder padded sleepers to the baseboard joins on the scenic section track, and then in the future I will cut these rails down just to separate them. I have built this layout to be as easy as possible to take apart when it's needed to be, so having these at the scenic section just makes that a little bit easier to take apart. The points I use on the scenic section are all large radius Pico streamline points. I use large radius just to make the track work more gentle and keep it more realistic and subtle. The points are also fully ready to be wired up, so I've done the relevant modifications to allow the frog to be individually powered, and all the holes were drilled for the point motors as well. So the arrangement of the points is based on a real junction called Halifax Junction, which lies just south of Ipswich Tunnel, just before the tunnel entrance. So I thought I'd add this junction in just to make it a bit more accurate to the area I'm basing the layout on. And we have a pair of crossovers, and then the point in the distance, as I said earlier, will be used to access the depot in the future. So these two sets of points you can see now are used for trains to swap onto the opposite main line. So for example, a train can be on the right-hand line, and then that can cross over onto the opposite line to then run into the field yard on the wrong line. I thought I'd add this in because in reality this junction is used for trains to cross over onto the wrong line to access different platforms at Ipswich Station. So having this junction here adds a bit more operational interest to the layout for both the scenic section and the field yard. So in this video I'll be showing you how I laid all the track, and I'll just pre-warn you, it is a very long-winded process. I decided to add cork down to give it a ballast shoulder, so that required gluing down, and then all the track is glued as well, so I haven't used any trap pins on the layout apart from the solder padded sleepers just to get them in position. But with respacing all the sleepers and glue time waiting for it to go off, it certainly is a very long-winded process, and there are obviously other ways to do this, but I thought I'd do this method just because I've never really done it before. But as you can see, the results kind of speak for themselves. I'll also only be focusing on track laying in this video, so whilst the track's all ready to be wired up, as you can see, I've also added all the dropper wires in and things. That'll be a topic for a future video, getting all this powered. So today I'll just be focusing on the track laying. So I'm going to turn back time now, and you'll rejoin me when I'm about halfway through building the scenic section track. And as always, I hope you enjoy the video. So you've joined me now where I'm pretty much halfway through laying the scenic section track. So so far I've got the countryside end of the layout in, so the two tracks which join up to the full yard over in this corner. Then I've also started laying the series of point work for mini Halifax Junction, and as you can see, we've already got two sets of points in here. So for this closest section of tracking, the next stage is adding in the next set of points. And as you can see, these cutout sheets for the Pico templates are really handy. So I did use quite a lot of these just to get an idea on what I can do with the junction, because I've had to bear in mind the baseboard joins. So these two baseboards here are actually two baseboards joined together. So this piece of track before it was long enough just so the end of the rails on this side match up with the baseboard join, and then the set of points which will then connect to it there. Pretty much, you get the idea. These will have to somewhat be sort of anchored in place, and I've ordered some copper clad sleepers to do that. Normally I use the DCC Concepts solder padded sleepers, which have come in very handy for it, but with these 2 points I will be using copper clad sleepers instead. But before I do that, I'm going to lay the next piece of tracking from this point here, and then that will come along and then meet up where the 2 pieces of point work will go. So I'm going to get that in first, and I also need to get the cork laid in position too. First of all, I'm going to just cut the section of cork off just to use on the next piece of track. So I've marked it roughly where I want it. I've got my cutting knife, steel ruler, just to keep it nice and well aligned. So I've just scored the line in it, and then it's just a matter of bending it and putting it away like that, nice and straightforward. And then I use Copydex to glue everything down with. So I'll be now adding the Copydex to this section of cork and then letting it go off for about 10 minutes, and then it'll be ready to stick back down. There we are. So I'm now going to leave this for about 10 minutes just for the glue to start going a bit tacky, and then that's when I know it will be ready to put on the layout. Now I'm going to apply the glue onto the track section. The top tip for you: don't paint these white if you do struggle. The Copydex glue, if you haven't used it before, it has got a slightly yellowy tinge to it, so you can make it out on the on a white baseboard just about. But if you're using something like PVA or whatever to do it, then you might struggle a little bit more. So yeah, white probably wasn't the best decision to paint these with, but it's what I had in the house, so I just thought I'd do it, and it made it stand out from the all the other wood around it as well. But I'm going to leave this also now for about 10 minutes just to go off, and then it'll be ready to get stuck down. So it's been about 10 minutes, and if I show you the glue on the cork strip, you can see it's starting to go off, and it will start to adhere to the baseboard nice and sticky. So I'm going to lay that across there. I've weighted that down now, and I'm just checking it's nice and flat across its length, which it is. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It doesn't take long for the Copydex to fully cure. At this moment in time, we are going through a little bit of a heat wave, so it does get quite warm in here, which certainly does help the drying process. But the longer you leave it, the more sort of stuck it will become, if you like. So I'm going to leave that now for around an hour, and in the meantime, I'm going to start preparing the piece of track for it. So I'll go ahead now and show you how to space out all the sleepers. So there's plenty of videos how to respace a track on YouTube already, so I'll try not to waste too much time doing it, but this is definitely the most long-winded part of the track laying process. As I said earlier on, the track I'm using is Pico Code 75 concrete sleepered track, and the first stages of sleeper spacing is just cutting away all of the webbing between the sleepers, and yeah, this part definitely takes the longest, and I thought, just as a reference, I'll just show you just about how long of time it takes. So the time is currently 10 to 10, as it says on my watch, and by the time I've finished respacing all of these sleepers, I'll look at the time again, and then that will give you an idea on how long it takes to do all this, and this is per piece of track as well, bear in mind. But first thing I do is I cut away around 20 sleepers, because they won't be needed. So once I've got those out of the way, we can now begin cutting down all of these pieces of webbing. So I've now cut away all the pieces of webbing, and now I can freely move each individual sleeper, as you can see. I did go ahead and cut this piece of track down, but it didn't need to be full length anyway, so I've just cut it down to roughly where I need it. If I need to trim it down anymore, I will do. It's now time to start respacing these into their correct positions, and I use the Railway Laser Lines sleeper spacing tools to help me do these, and it certainly does really make it a bit faster. You can cut it by eye, you can position them by eye if you really wanted to, but in all honesty, I'd rather just pay a bit of extra money for these. I've also got the smaller one they do as well, which comes in handy for the curves. So before I do anything more, I'm just going to slide these up into a rough position first of all. Right. So I've got the sleeper spacing tool, and I'm just now going to position it on top of these sleepers and just drag them in position roughly. And then as you do it, this tool will start to slowly sink down. You'll feel them catch, and then it's just a matter of holding them in place. As you can see, this is really tedious, but the end result is worthwhile. So I like to do this with the track facing down, so the sleepers are on top, because then if you accidentally move it around like that, all the sleepers you've already done won't get mixed up. So it's always best to flip it and keep it upside down, I think. And there we go. So you pretty much get the idea. So I will need to add a few more sleepers on this one, which I'll do, but I'll get back to you once I've respaced this last section of track. So this whole piece of track now has been fully respaced, as you can see, pretty much right up to the end sleepers. I always leave a sleeper end missing off the ends for the fish plates, and I'll add just one to finish it all off at the end. I still need to add the dropper wires to this, but it's already been half an hour, so time is currently 10:20. So yeah, took half hour just to respace this piece of track, and this isn't quite a full length of flexi track either, so I don't know how long it would have taken without the sleeper spacing tools, but they do speed the process up massively. So with the piece of track on the right now respaced, with a side-by-side comparison to the left-hand side, which is completely unmodified, you can hopefully see the difference that the sleeper spacing makes. I know that there'll be some that probably think this is pointless, but in my honest opinion, it's definitely improved the track massively. You can see how close together the sleepers on the left-hand track are compared to the right, and yeah, I just think overall it just does look better. It does take a while to do, but it really is worth doing, I think. There we go. So the dropper wires have been added, so red for positive, black for negative as usual, and I can just slot that roughly into the same position it was before. At this point, I don't really bother too much about getting it exact, but as long as it looks nice on the eye, that's good enough for me. But this is now ready to get positioned on the layout. So before I go ahead and lay the track down, I'm just going to cut through this section of cork, as it does cross a baseboard joint, so then it's kept separated. So I've just placed some more scraps of wood and some more weights on there just to hold that track down where I've glued it. And now I'm going to just leave this now overnight to dry, and then by the time I come in here I can get in and lay the next pieces of track, which will be the next set of points. But as you can see, it's very long-winded, it's extremely tedious, and it's quite easy to make a meal of it once you've cut all the webbing of the sleepers off. And obviously you've got to be really careful or really accurate with where you place your dropper wires, because cutting away the sleepers and everything, it makes the track really difficult to deal with, especially on the curves. So I can completely understand why people wouldn't want to do this. But so far I am happy that I've done and that I have done that, and the end result so far has been quite rewarding. So it's the following day, and I've just come in here and I've removed the weights and the piece of wood that we're holding the piece of track down with. So now that's fully glued in. I do want to apologise because whilst I was filming the previous clip, my microphone actually ran out of battery, so halfway through all the audio stopped, so I had to resolve to a time lapse in the end. But hopefully you got the idea. It was just a matter of refitting your track as normal, and then adding your glue, and then weighing the track down. And once you got it in its final result, obviously track laying is repetitive, and you'll be seeing me doing it more over the course of the video anyway. But now I need to get the next set of points installed, which will cross these or join these two tracks together. Once again, referring to the real location I'm basing this junction on. The points I'm using on the scenic section are all large radius points, just to keep the track work a bit more gentle and realistic. But one thing I also do to these points is I follow a diagram I found on the DCC Concepts Models website, just to give them a bit of improvement. That involves cutting away the sleepers around the point mechanism area, as well as the spring in the middle, and just adding in some solder padded sleepers just to improve the look even further. And then what I also do is I modify the rails up to the top of the point, just to bring the track spacing a bit closer together. So I've just finished prepping the points for the crossovers. So as you can see, I've added the dropper wires to both points. So we have a positive and a negative wire which join the two rails together. And then I've also got the green frog wire attached to the frog. And then the same applies to this point. But then I've also cut away the sleepers around the point mechanism blade, and then I've also cut the spring away, so now I can move that freely. And I've done that because I plan to use slow action point motors on the scenic section, which does require removing the spring. And then same on this point as well, so as you can see, that's now moving without a click or whatever. And then this point on the right, I actually trimmed down the rails just to bring the track spacing together. So I'm now going to get these on the layout. Okay, so as you can see, all the points are now in place. I also put another piece of flexi track in as well. Um, I won't be adding any track to the turnout of the point. That will be accessing the depot in the future, which I'll be laying at a future date. So for the time being, that will just lay, that will just remain on its own, and then a piece of track will just connect onto there and carry on straight alongside this other piece of flexi track. So now I'm doing the final curve of the layout, and as you can see, I'm already gluing in the next strips of cork. When I glue the cork down on curves, I use offcuts of timber, so smaller pieces than I normally use, and then just lay them out, matching the desired curve of the cork, and then just weigh it down as normal. Sometimes it can be awkward laying cork on curves, especially if they're tighter. The cork does have the tendency to sort of warp itself when you're trying to bend it into shape, but if you cut that strip down in half or whatever, you'll find that it's easier to work with. But I didn't have to do that on this layout, which was quite fortunate. So whilst this dries, I'm going to respace some more track, and then once the glue's all settled, I can then look at adding the super elevation pieces. To achieve the super elevation, I used the super elevation packs from West Hill Wagon Works, and this is what they look like out of the packet. So as you can see, they're just a series of wedges. So you've got some numbers on there. So you've got S0, S1, S2, and S3. And then if I just come down, you'll see that the smaller numbers are the smaller pieces or the shorter pieces, and then the larger numbers are the taller pieces. So idea is that you start off gentle and then increase the banking as you go around the curve, depending on how banked you want the curve to be. Nice and easy to use, and as you can see, you've got some slots in the middle to use track pins in them. Nice easy kit, and they certainly do their job well. So I'm going to lay these on the curve. Okay, so I've just laid in the first curve, and we now have a completed loop on one main line. Laying the track on a curve is a bit more difficult and a bit more awkward because once you've cut down once you've cut all the webbing off underneath the track and respace the sleepers, it becomes a lot more difficult to work with, and can be a little bit of annoying. But once you know what you're doing, it's not too bad. It's just a matter of taking your time and taking care. So what I do is I respace the sleepers again, because you'll never keep them where they are. So I'll use the smaller respacing jig, and then just work it round little bit by little bit, and then weigh the track down accordingly. And once it's sort of weighed down in one spot, that's when you can move the track around to get it into the desired shape. And then you just continue to weigh it down as you go. Once you know what you're doing, it's not too bad, and I still think it does look better than pinning the track down. The important thing is just taking your time and taking care, and I always work on one piece of track at a time before moving on to the next one. So all in all, this bend took a couple of evenings to do, but came out all right. So what I'm going to do now is just get this last mainline laid and met up with the field yard as well, and then we've got both loops completed. Okay, so we've got both main lines in now, both curves, and they meet up to the field yard there. So we now have an official complete loop on both sides. Still not quite finished yet. I do need to add in the missing sleepers, but before I do that, I'm just going to double check the clearances on this curve. So when I check the clearances, I use some Mark IIIs to test it with, because these are typically the longest wagons or items of stock that will run around the layout. So it is quite important you check it using the longest piece of stock you have, because then you know your shorter examples will be just fine. So I've just positioned both Mark IIIs on the track, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hold them next to each other on each line, but stop them just as they pass each other. So I'm going to run this one past like that, so we know it's fine there, and we know it's fine there. And I'm just going to keep doing this round the whole curve on each track, so then I know that the clearances across the whole run are okay. So as you just saw, the coaches ran across both tracks without catching one another, so I know that clearances are okay. Once again, like I said, it's important to do this on your longer examples of stock, just so you can guarantee the short ones will be safe as well. I also kept an eye on how close the coaches were as they ran round, and I was happy with the distance. They only got about, I think the closest they got was about 3 or 4 millimeters. But as long as they don't collide, then you know you'll be okay. So taking a closer look at the super elevation wedges through the track, I've spaced them out accordingly, and over baseboard joints I made sure they were as close together as they should be, so then I can add the solder sleepers in or copper clad sleepers in, and that way the super elevation wedges are supporting them as well. But if I just come across, you'll see them through the track, and as they progress around the corner. Nice simple kit to use, and they do a good job of providing the super elevation. So I've used them in this section as well, which will be non-scenic. This will have the programming track on as well eventually. So the track in this area is pinned down rather than glued, but as you saw, you do have the track pin slots in them as well. So if you pin your track rather than glue it, you can still use them. Hopefully you can see here the effect of having the super elevation. It makes the trains lean into the curve or in one direction as they go around the bend, which is a very nice detail, makes it look a lot more realistic. And with the super elevation kit from West Hill Wagon Works, it really couldn't have been easier. So definitely something I could recommend to anyone watching this. And I'm really glad I went ahead and made a decision to do it. And I'm looking forward to see the trains running around and banking as they go around the curves. So the final pieces of the puzzle were adding in the solder padded sleepers from DCC Concepts. And I've added these at baseboard joints just to keep the track aligned. As when I want to take this part layout apart, I can keep it all in one piece with any luck. So taking all the relevant precautions to allow easy dismantle in the future. And then I also added in the missing sleepers at track joins underneath fish plates and places like that. And there we go. So all the track on the scenic section is now laid, and we're now one step closer to trains running around the room once again. Really pleased with how it's turned out, especially that corner over there. That's going to look really good with all the trains running around with the super elevation on the curves. We're about 99% finished now, just waiting for some copper clad sleepers to turn up, which unfortunately didn't turn up in time for the video. But I'll get those added in where I need to add them before I get the next video underway, and I'll show you then. The next video will be focusing on getting all this track wired up, and then trains will be running around again. And then very, very soon, this whole field yard will be populated with trains, which is one thing I'm really, really looking forward to seeing. So there we go. That brings the video to an end. I hope you enjoyed it as usual. Hopefully you picked up some tips and tricks, and hopefully this has inspired you to get the track down on your layout or given you some ideas on how you can do it. As I said, certainly are quicker ways to do it, and I do apologise for the video length, but it certainly did take a long time with all the prep and things, but really happy with the end result. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers guys, happy modelling.